Hello everyone. Welcome back to the Easy English Spark channel. I'm so excited to have you here today. In this series, we're going to explore practical strategies to enhance your English listening and speaking skills, build confidence, and speak more fluently than ever before. We'll dive into how to use podcasts to improve your listening, overcome common obstacles in speaking, and develop real confidence. With tips on active study, shadowing, and goal setting, we'll keep you motivated and on track. So let's get started and light up your English journey. The road to fluency starts now. Chapter 1. Getting started with English learning through podcasts. Welcome to Chapter 1 of our journey into learning English through podcasts. In this chapter, we're going to dive into why podcasts are one of the best tools you can use to improve your English skills and how to make the most of them right from the start. First, let's talk about podcasts themselves. In today's world, podcasts are everywhere. They're on nearly every topic imaginable, from language learning to health, politics, business, and entertainment. Podcasts are essentially audio programs that you can listen to on your phone, computer, or any device that supports them. But why are podcasts such a great way to learn English? One of the biggest reasons is that they provide you with authentic, real-world English. Unlike textbooks or language apps that often use simplified language, podcasts give you the kind of English that native speakers actually use in everyday conversations. You'll hear a variety of accents, slang, idioms, and natural expressions. All of this helps you get used to the sound and rhythm of the language as it's spoken in real life, which is key to improving your comprehension. Another huge benefit of podcasts is that they are convenient and flexible. You can listen to them anywhere, whether you're on your way to work, at the gym, cooking dinner, or even relaxing at home. You don't need to sit down at a desk to study. You can integrate learning into your daily life. This makes it much easier to stay consistent. And we all know that consistency is one of the most important factors when it comes to language learning. So, how do you get started with learning English through podcasts? The first step is to choose the right podcast. Since there are so many options out there, you'll want to pick one that matches your current level of English and interests. If you're just starting out, you might want to begin with a podcast specifically designed for language learners. These tend to speak more slowly and clearly, and they focus on vocabulary and grammar that's useful for beginners. As you get more comfortable, you can start listening to podcasts aimed at native speakers. These will be faster and may have more complex vocabulary, but they're an excellent way to challenge yourself and really immerse in the language. Look for topics that you find interesting so that you're motivated to keep listening, whether it's science, technology, storytelling, comedy, or anything else that piques your interest. Once you've chosen a podcast, the next step is to make listening a habit. Try to listen regularly, even if it's just for a few minutes each day. You don't need to sit and listen for an hour at a time. Just small, consistent sessions can make a big difference. Listening to podcasts regularly will help train your brain to become more familiar with English sounds, rhythms, and vocabulary. In the beginning, you might not understand everything. That's completely normal. Don't stress if you miss some words or phrases. The goal is to get used to the flow of the language and pick up as much as you can. Over time, you'll start to notice that you can understand more and more, and you'll be able to follow along with greater ease. Another tip is to listen actively. This means paying attention to the words and phrases you don't understand, and taking the time to look them up. Write them down, make notes, and try to use them in your own sentences later on. Active listening helps you engage with the material, making it more memorable and easier to recall later. You might also want to listen to the same episode more than once. Repetition is incredibly powerful when it comes to language learning. The more you listen, the more you'll start to recognize words, phrases, and structures. On your second or third listen, you may even understand things that you missed the first time around. Now, while podcasts are a fantastic tool for learning English, it's important to remember that they should be part of a well-rounded study routine. Listening to podcasts alone won't make you fluent in English. You should also incorporate other methods of learning, such as practicing speaking, studying grammar, and expanding your vocabulary. But podcasts are a great way to build your listening comprehension, improve your pronunciation, and learn how English sounds in the real world. Finally, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Language learning is a journey, and it's okay if you don't get everything right away. The key is to keep practicing and stay consistent. Podcasts provide a relaxed and low-pressure environment where you can learn at your own pace. So don't worry about being perfect. Just enjoy the process and let the language come to you. So, in summary, getting started with learning English through podcasts is simple. Choose a podcast that fits your level and interests, listen regularly, and engage actively with the content. Over time, you'll find that your English skills improve in a natural and enjoyable way. Remember, the more you listen, the more you'll learn, so keep going and enjoy the ride. That's it for Chapter 1. I hope you're excited to start this journey with podcasts. In the next chapter, we'll explore some common challenges that learners face and how to overcome them. Stay tuned. Chapter 2: Common Obstacles in English Learning. Welcome to Chapter 2 of our journey to mastering English. In this chapter, we're going to take a closer look at some of the most common obstacles learners face when trying to improve their English and how to overcome them. As much as we want language learning to be straightforward, there are always challenges along the way. Understanding these obstacles is the first step to overcoming them, and I'm here to guide you through that process. Let's begin with the first major obstacle many learners encounter: lack of motivation. Motivation can be one of the most powerful driving forces in language learning, but it can also be fragile. Without motivation, it becomes very easy to lose focus and get distracted, especially when progress feels slow. So, why do learners lose motivation? There are several reasons for this. One common cause is setting unrealistic expectations. Many learners expect to see significant progress quickly, and when they don't, they get discouraged. Learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. Progress can be slow, especially in the beginning, but every small step forward counts. If you set small, achievable goals, you'll be able to measure your success and stay motivated. Remember, every time you understand a new word or phrase, or can hold a small conversation in English, it's a victory. Another reason motivation can fade is lack of a clear purpose. If you're learning English without a clear reason why, it can be easy to lose interest. Ask yourself, why do I want to learn English? Do you want to travel, get a better job, connect with people from other cultures, or simply enjoy English? Media. Having a clear goal gives you a sense of direction and purpose. It keeps you on track and reminds you of the bigger picture when things get tough. The next major obstacle many learners face is fear of making mistakes. This is completely normal, but it can be paralyzing if not addressed. Many learners are afraid to speak because they don't want to make errors, whether it's with pronunciation, grammar, or vocabulary. But here's the truth. Mistakes are a natural part of the learning process. No one learns a language without making mistakes, and it's through those mistakes that you learn and improve. In fact, making mistakes helps you remember better and forces you to correct and refine your language skills. When you're learning English, you have to embrace the idea of trial and error. If you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. It's simply a step toward improvement. The more mistakes you make, the faster you'll learn. If you're afraid to speak because of mistakes, try practicing in a safe, low-pressure environment. You could start with listening to podcasts, reading aloud, or recording yourself speaking. This allows you to get comfortable with the sound of your own voice in English and build confidence before speaking in front of others. Another obstacle that many learners struggle with is lack of time. We live in a busy world, and finding time to dedicate to learning a new language can be difficult. Between work, school, family, and other responsibilities, many people simply feel like they don't have enough time to focus on English. But here's the secret. You don't need hours every day. Small, consistent efforts are often more effective than long, sporadic sessions. Even 10 or 15 minutes a day can make a big difference over time. The key is consistency. You can listen to podcasts during your commute, practice vocabulary while you wait for a bus, or use language apps during your lunch break. It's all about integrating learning into your daily routine so that it doesn't feel like an extra burden. Now, let's talk about another issue many learners face: not having access to real, natural English. This can be particularly challenging if you don't live in an English-speaking environment. Without regular interaction with native speakers, it can be difficult to get used to the natural flow of the language, the slang, and the cultural nuances. But thanks to technology, this is no longer as much of a problem. Podcasts, YouTube, online courses, and language exchange apps make it easier than ever to access natural English. You can listen to authentic conversations, watch videos in English, or find a language partner to practice with, all from the comfort of your home. If you can't find native speakers to talk to in person, there are plenty of online communities that can help. The next obstacle is learning too much grammar too quickly. While grammar is essential to language learning, many learners get caught up in studying rules and exceptions without spending enough time practicing speaking and listening. This can create a situation where you understand grammar rules but struggle to apply them in real-life conversations. Language learning is about balance. You should focus not only on grammar, but also on speaking, listening, and reading. Grammar should be learned alongside practical skills, not as something to study in isolation. The best way to internalize grammar is by exposing yourself to English naturally, like through podcasts, and practicing how the grammar is used in context. When you hear and read sentences using the structures you're learning, it helps you understand them in a real-world context. Another challenge many learners face is lack of confidence. This is especially true for beginners. It can feel daunting to speak in English, especially if you're not sure if you'll be understood or if your pronunciation is accurate. But confidence comes with practice, and making mistakes is part of the process. The more you speak, the more you'll gain confidence. Start by speaking in simple sentences, then gradually build up to more complex conversations. You'll start to notice that your confidence grows with each conversation. Surround yourself with supportive people who encourage your progress and understand that language learning takes time. Lastly, there's the issue of overwhelm. English can seem like a huge mountain to climb, especially when you look at all the vocabulary, grammar rules, pronunciation patterns, and idioms that exist. But the key is to take it one step at a time. Break your learning down into smaller, manageable goals. Don't try to tackle everything at once. Focus on one area, whether it's vocabulary, grammar, listening, or speaking, and master that before moving on to the next. Over time, as you build your skills step by step, you'll start to see the bigger picture and feel more in control of your learning. In conclusion, while there are many obstacles to learning English, each one can be overcome with the right strategies. Remember that motivation, practice, and patience are key. Mistakes are simply a part of the learning process, and with consistent effort, you will see improvement. The most important thing is to keep going, even when things feel difficult. Every challenge you face is an opportunity to grow, and with each step forward, you're getting closer to your goal of mastering English. That's it for Chapter 2. In the next chapter, we'll dive into the importance of listening and how it can be your secret weapon in learning English. Stay tuned. Chapter 3. Why listening matters more than you think. Welcome to Chapter 3. In this chapter, we're going to explore a key aspect of language learning that many people tend to overlook: the power of listening. Listening is often regarded as just one of the 4 language skills alongside speaking, reading, and writing, but in reality, it plays a much bigger role in mastering English than you might think. It's not just about understanding what someone is saying, but about improving every aspect of your language abilities. By the end of this chapter, you'll see why listening is absolutely critical to your success in learning English. Listening as the foundation of language learning. First, let's start with a basic truth. Language acquisition starts with listening. Think about how you learned your first language. As a baby, you didn't start by speaking or writing. You listened. You listened to your parents, your family, and the people around you. You picked up the sounds, rhythms, and words of your native language through exposure. This is how language works naturally, and this process doesn't change when you're learning a second language like English. Listening helps you build an intuitive understanding of how language works. When you listen to English, you begin to internalize the structure of the language. You hear how sentences are formed, the rhythm of the speech, the rise and fall of intonation, and even how different words are used in different contexts. Over time, you'll start to recognize patterns in English that help you understand meaning, even if you don't know every word. This is why listening is the most important skill to develop, particularly in the early stages of learning English. Improving pronunciation and intonation. One of the most significant benefits of listening to English is that it improves your pronunciation. If you want to speak English more fluently, you need to sound like a native speaker, and the best way to achieve this is through exposure to authentic spoken English. When you listen to English podcasts, movies, or conversations, you're getting constant input on how to pronounce words correctly. You hear how native speakers stress certain syllables, how they link words together, and how they use tone to express meaning. This helps you acquire the natural rhythm and melody of the language. Over time, you'll find that your pronunciation improves, not just in individual words, but in the overall flow of your speech. For example, if you listen to a podcast, pay attention to how speakers stress key words in a sentence. English has a specific rhythm where stressed words are louder, longer, and more clearly pronounced than unstressed words. By listening closely to this, you can start to imitate the same patterns when you speak, which makes you sound more natural and fluent. Listening expands your vocabulary. Another reason listening matters so much is that it introduces you to new vocabulary and context. When you read, you can often look up unfamiliar words in a dictionary, but when you listen, you're learning how words are used in real-life situations. You get to hear phrases, idioms, and expressions that are commonly used by native speakers, which you might not find in a textbook. For instance, when you listen to a podcast on a topic that interests you, you might hear specialized vocabulary related to that field. If you're into technology, you'll hear words like algorithm, coding, or artificial intelligence used in context. This helps you not only understand the meaning of these words, but also how they are used in everyday conversation. Listening also helps you to learn collocations, that is, which words naturally go together. For example, we say, make a decision, not do a decision, and take a shower, not have a shower. These are patterns you'll start to recognize and internalize as you listen more. By encountering vocabulary and context, you'll develop a stronger and more natural-sounding vocabulary. 4. Developing listening comprehension. Listening is a vital skill because it helps you improve your listening comprehension. It's one thing to read and understand written English, but it's another to understand spoken English, especially when it's delivered quickly with slang or with different accents. Many learners struggle with listening comprehension because spoken English can be fast, and people often don't pronounce words as clearly as they appear in written form. Native speakers use contractions, reduce sounds, and often speak in ways that are different from what's written in textbooks. When you listen regularly, you train your brain to recognize and understand these nuances. One important aspect of listening comprehension is getting used to different accents and dialects. English is spoken in many different countries, each with its own accent, and being exposed to a variety of accents through listening will help you understand English no matter where it's spoken. Whether it's American English, British English, Australian English, or any other variety, listening to people from different backgrounds will broaden your understanding of the language. Listening helps you think in English. Another powerful benefit of listening is that it encourages you to start thinking in English. When you constantly hear English, your brain begins to process the language more naturally, and you don't need to translate every word into your native language. This is a big step in becoming fluent. Think about how you understand your native language. You don't need to translate words in your head, right? It happens automatically. The more you listen to English, the more you'll start to understand it without thinking about the translation. You'll begin to think directly in English, which is a key aspect of fluency. The more you listen to conversations, podcasts, or TV shows in English, the more you'll start to absorb the language and develop that automatic understanding. Listening builds confidence. Now, let's talk about confidence. One of the reasons many learners feel stuck in their English learning journey is that they don't feel confident speaking or using the language. But listening can play a huge role in building that confidence. The more you listen, the more familiar the language becomes. It stops feeling foreign, and you start to get comfortable with it. Listening also gives you the chance to hear how native speakers make mistakes or express themselves in imperfect ways. It reminds you that no one is perfect, and that makes speaking and using English in real life less intimidating. When you hear people speaking naturally and confidently, it encourages you to do the same. Listening is essential for real-life conversations. At the end of the day, listening is what allows you to engage in real-life conversations. Whether you're traveling abroad, working in an English-speaking environment, or simply interacting with English speakers online, listening is the first step to communication. If you don't listen well, you can't respond effectively, and that makes conversations difficult and frustrating. But when you improve your listening skills, you'll be able to follow conversations, understand questions, and express yourself more naturally. Even in professional settings, strong listening skills are essential. In business meetings, interviews, or casual work chats, being able to understand others and respond appropriately is crucial. By actively listening, you'll be able to participate more confidently and fluently in these situations. How to incorporate listening into your learning routine. By now, you should be convinced that listening is an essential part of learning English. So, how do you start using it in your routine? Here's the good news. It's easier than ever to incorporate listening into your daily life. Whether you're listening to English podcasts, watching TV shows or movies, or listening to audiobooks, there are so many ways to practice. To get the most out of listening, try to choose content that is at your level, but also challenges you. If you're a beginner, start with slow, clear podcasts or children's TV shows. As you improve, gradually move on to more complex content, like news programs, interviews, and documentaries. The more variety you expose yourself to, the better your listening comprehension will become. Conclusion. In conclusion, listening is more than just a skill. It's the key to unlocking all other aspects of language learning. It builds your vocabulary, improves your pronunciation, helps you think in English, and gives you the confidence to speak and understand English in real-life situations. So, make listening a central part of your study routine, and remember that every time you listen, you're taking a step closer to becoming fluent. That's it for Chapter 3. In the next chapter, we'll discuss how to make the most of listening. Practice and avoid common mistakes that learners often make. Stay tuned. Chapter 4. Understanding language acquisition versus language learning. Welcome to Chapter 4. In this chapter, we're going to explore two concepts that are crucial to understanding how languages are learned: language acquisition and language learning. These two terms are often used interchangeably, but they are fundamentally different processes. Understanding the distinction between them will not only deepen your knowledge of how language works, but will also help you approach your English learning journey in a more effective and meaningful way. What is language acquisition? Let's start with language acquisition, a term introduced by linguist Stephen Krashen. Language acquisition is the subconscious process by which humans naturally acquire their first language. This process begins early in life when we're babies, and it happens almost effortlessly. We don't have to sit down and study grammar rules or memorize vocabulary lists to acquire our native language. We simply listen and absorb. When we acquire a language, we do it by being exposed to it in a variety of contexts. We hear people speak around us. We observe interactions, and over time, we start to understand the meanings of words, sentences, and phrases without consciously thinking about grammar rules. This is why babies and young children can learn to speak and understand their mother tongue so well, often without ever being taught grammar in the traditional sense. The key point here is that language acquisition is a passive process. You're not consciously focusing on memorizing vocabulary or rules. Instead, you're absorbing the language from the environment around you. This process happens naturally, without intentional effort, and as a result, you develop a deep, intuitive understanding of the language. What is language learning? On the other hand, language learning is a more active, conscious process. This is the method we typically use when learning a second language like English. Unlike language acquisition, which happens subconsciously, language learning involves deliberate effort. It's the process where we focus on the formal aspects of language, such as grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation, often through study, lessons, or textbooks. When you learn a language, you're usually focusing on explicit instruction. For example, you might memorize vocabulary, practice verb tenses, or learn specific grammar rules. While this is an important part of language development, it's much more intellectual than language acquisition, which is more emotional and instinctive. Language learning can also involve a lot of error correction and conscious practice. For instance, you might study the difference between I am going and I will go, which requires understanding the rules of verb tense. Language learning typically takes place in formal settings, like classrooms, or through structured learning tools such as textbooks, apps, or language courses. This method can be highly effective for mastering the technical aspects of a language. but it often doesn't offer the same depth of fluency that acquisition does. Krashen's input hypothesis, the link between acquisition and learning. Now that we've defined both acquisition and learning, let's look at how they fit together in the process of becoming fluent in a language. Stephen Krashen, a leading researcher in second language acquisition, proposed the input hypothesis to explain how language is acquired. According to Krashen, we acquire a language when we are exposed to language that is slightly above our current level of understanding, what he calls I+1, input plus 1. This idea suggests that in order to acquire a language, we need to be exposed to input that is just beyond our current knowledge, so we can challenge ourselves without feeling overwhelmed. For example, if you're a beginner, listening to a podcast in English that is just a little bit more advanced than your current level will expose you to new vocabulary and grammar structures that will gradually help you acquire the language. Krashen's hypothesis emphasizes that language acquisition happens best when we focus on comprehensible input. This means that you don't need to understand every word. You just need to understand the general meaning of what is being said. As you continue to receive comprehensible input, your language skills grow, and over time, you become more proficient. 4. How language acquisition and learning work together. Now, you might be wondering, if language acquisition is so important, why do we need language learning at all? Here's the thing. Both processes are essential for mastering a language. Language acquisition helps you build fluency, while language learning provides you with the tools and structure needed to understand the rules of the language. Language acquisition helps you develop an intuitive grasp of how English sounds, the flow of sentences, and the natural use of words and expressions. This is how you learn to speak naturally and understand spoken English quickly. For example, when you listen to a podcast or a conversation in English, you're acquiring the language by listening to native speakers, picking up new words and phrases, and absorbing how English is used in real contexts. However, language learning provides you with the specific knowledge needed to understand the technical side of the language, like grammar rules, sentence structure, and syntax. This knowledge allows you to communicate more clearly and accurately, which is especially important in written English or formal situations. Language learning gives you the framework for your language skills, while language acquisition fills in the details and makes your speech sound natural. So, while you might acquire a lot of vocabulary and grammar intuitively by listening to English, you'll still need to study the technical aspects of the language to refine your skills. For instance, you might intuitively understand how to use the present continuous tense after listening to several podcasts, but you'll need to study the rules in more detail to fully grasp when and why it's used. Which one should you focus on? So, which process should you focus on more? Acquisition or learning? The truth is, It depends on your goals and your current level of proficiency. If you're just starting out in English, you'll need to focus more on acquisition. In the beginning, listening and exposure to authentic English will help you get used to the sound and flow of the language. You don't need to worry too much about grammar rules or memorizing vocabulary at this stage. The goal is to familiarize yourself with the language so it feels natural. As you progress and become more confident, you can start integrating more focused language learning. You might want to start studying specific grammar rules, expanding your vocabulary, and practicing writing and speaking. This more active learning will give you the tools you need to communicate more clearly and effectively in a variety of contexts. For learners who are at an intermediate or advanced level, the best approach is to balance both language acquisition and language learning. At this stage, you should continue listening to English content regularly so you can keep acquiring new words, phrases, and expressions. But at the same time, you should dedicate time to more structured learning, studying grammar, improving your writing skills, and practicing speaking. How to maximize both acquisition and learning. Here's how you can combine both acquisition and learning to improve your English. Listen to authentic content. Choose podcasts, audiobooks, or YouTube videos in English that match your level. If you're a beginner, start with simpler content, but gradually increase the difficulty as you improve. This will help you acquire language naturally through exposure. Use active learning. Don't just passively listen to content. Make notes, look up unfamiliar words, and try to use them in sentences. You can also listen to content multiple times to reinforce vocabulary and grammar structures. Practice speaking and writing. Active speaking and writing are essential for language learning. Use the vocabulary and grammar you've acquired to practice. Forming sentences. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. They are a crucial part of the learning process. Study grammar and vocabulary. Once you have a solid foundation in listening and speaking, start studying grammar rules and vocabulary more formally. This will help you refine your language skills and improve your accuracy. Conclusion. In conclusion, language acquisition and language learning are both essential components of becoming fluent in English. While language acquisition helps you develop an intuitive understanding of the language, language learning gives you the structure and rules you need to use English correctly. By combining both, you can create a well-rounded approach to language learning that helps you become not just fluent, but also accurate and confident in your use of English. That's it for Chapter 4. In the next chapter, we'll dive into practical ways to expose yourself to more English through listening, so you can continue acquiring the language naturally. Stay tuned. Chapter 5. Engaging with English content for better results. Welcome to Chapter 5. Now that we've covered some foundational concepts like language acquisition and learning, it's time to dive into a crucial aspect of language learning: engaging with English content. If you're serious about improving your English, simply exposing yourself to the language isn't enough. To truly make progress, you need to actively engage with the content you're consuming. In this chapter, we'll explore why engagement is so important, and I'll share with you some practical tips on how to engage with English content in ways that will help you improve faster and more effectively. Why engagement matters. Before we get into the specifics of how to engage with English content, let's talk about why it's so important. You see, passive exposure to English, like listening to a podcast or watching a TV show without thinking about it, is a good start. But if you want to make real progress, you need to be actively involved in what you're hearing, seeing, or reading. Engagement means interacting with the content in a way that pushes your learning forward, rather than just letting it wash over you. Active engagement helps to reinforce new language in your mind and connects new vocabulary, grammar, and structures to real-life contexts. The more you interact with content, the more you're likely to remember and use what you've learned. It's not just about understanding the language in the moment. It's about integrating it into your long-term memory so that you can recall and use it whenever you need to. Think of engagement as a way of making the content stick in your mind. The more you engage with English in different ways, the better you'll understand it, and the faster you'll improve. The benefits of engaging with content. Engaging with English content has several key benefits. Increased retention. When you engage with content, you're actively processing the language, which helps you remember it. Whether it's writing down new words, repeating phrases, or practicing speaking, the more you interact, the better your memory of the language will be. Deeper understanding. Active engagement helps you understand the meaning behind the language. It's not just about knowing the words. It's about understanding how they are used in context, how they connect to each other, and how they shape meaning. This depth of understanding allows you to communicate more naturally and effectively. Better listening. Comprehension. The more you engage with spoken English, the better you'll become at understanding the language in real time. This is especially important when you're listening to native speakers who might speak quickly or use idioms, slang, or different accents. Active engagement forces you to focus more closely on the content, which improves your ability to follow along and understand. Confidence. In speaking and writing, as you engage more with English, you'll become more confident in your ability to use the language. By practicing new vocabulary, pronunciation, and structures, you'll feel more comfortable speaking and writing in English. How to engage with content. Practical tips. Now that we understand why engagement is important, let's talk about how to engage with English content in ways that will accelerate your learning. A. Don't just listen, take notes. One of the simplest ways to engage with content is by taking notes while you listen or watch. For example, if you're listening to a podcast or watching a video, jot down words or phrases that you don't understand. Later, look them up and try to use them in your own sentences. By writing down new vocabulary or interesting expressions, you're actively processing the language, which helps it stick. You can also make notes about pronunciation. For instance, when you hear a word or sentence that's hard to pronounce, write it down and practice saying it. Pay attention to the intonation and stress patterns used in the content and try to mimic them. B. Repeat and mimic. Another powerful way to engage with content is to repeat and mimic what you hear. This technique is called shadowing, and it's an incredibly effective way to improve your pronunciation, intonation, and overall fluency. Here's how it works. Pick a piece of content, maybe a podcast or a short video, and listen to a small section of it. Then, pause the recording and repeat exactly what you heard. Focus on matching the speaker's rhythm, tone, and pronunciation. As you practice shadowing, you'll notice improvements in your ability to reproduce natural-sounding English. This technique is not only great for improving pronunciation, but it also helps you develop a better ear for the language and makes you more comfortable speaking in English. C. Use content to practice. Speaking, engaging with content is not just about listening, it's also about speaking. After listening to a podcast, try to summarize what you heard in your own words. You can either speak out loud to yourself or record your summary and listen to it later. This practice forces you to think in English and express your thoughts clearly. If possible, try to find a language partner to discuss the content you've listened to. Join language exchange apps, conversation clubs, or online forums where you can talk to other English learners or native speakers. The goal is to take the knowledge you've gained from the content and use it in conversation. Speaking regularly will help you practice fluency, reinforce vocabulary, and boost your confidence. Engage with different types of content. Don't limit yourself to just one type of content. The more variety you expose yourself to, the better. If you're always listening to podcasts, try watching TV shows or movies in English. If you're always listening to formal English, try content that uses more colloquial language, like YouTube videos, stand-up comedy, or vlogs. Each type of content will expose you to different aspects of the language, such as slang, idioms, and cultural references. In addition to audio and video, you should also read regularly in English. Read articles, blogs, books, and social media posts. Reading gives you exposure to written language, which often differs from spoken language in terms of vocabulary, structure, and style. By engaging with a variety of content, you'll develop a more well-rounded understanding of the language. E. Ask questions and reflect. One of the most powerful ways to engage with content is to ask questions. As you listen, watch, or read, think critically about the material. Why did the speaker use a particular word or phrase? How does the sentence structure work? What cultural references or idioms can you identify? By reflecting on these questions, you'll deepen your understanding of the language and start thinking like a native speaker. Additionally, reflect on your progress regularly. After each session of engagement, ask yourself what new things you've learned. Did you discover new vocabulary? Did you notice something different in the way people speak or write? Reflecting on your progress will help you stay motivated and show you just how much you're improving. Common pitfalls to avoid. As you engage with English content, there are a few common pitfalls you should watch out for. Passive listening. It's easy to fall into the habit of listening to English content passively, especially when it's something you enjoy. However, listening without actively processing the language won't help you improve. Always make an effort to engage by taking notes, repeating what you hear, or thinking about how to use the language in your own life. Overloading yourself. It's tempting to listen to as much content as possible, thinking that the more you expose yourself to, the faster you'll learn. However, it's better to focus on quality over quantity. Too much content at once can overwhelm you and make it harder to retain what you've learned. Aim for a steady, manageable amount of content that challenges you but doesn't overwhelm you. Not challenging yourself. Enough. On the flip side, don't stay in your comfort zone for too long. If you're always listening to content that's at your current level, you'll plateau. Gradually push yourself to engage with more challenging content that pushes your limits. This will help you continue growing and developing your language skills. Conclusion. In conclusion, engaging with English content is one of the most powerful ways to improve your language skills. It helps you reinforce vocabulary, improve pronunciation, develop listening comprehension, and gain confidence in speaking and writing. By taking notes, repeating phrases, engaging in conversations, and exploring different types of content, you'll actively participate in the learning process and see faster results. Remember, the key is to stay consistent and keep engaging with the language every day. That's it for Chapter 5. In the next chapter, we'll discuss the different types of English content you can use to maximize your engagement and keep your learning exciting. Stay tuned. Chapter 6. A balanced approach to language learning. Welcome to Chapter 6. In this chapter, we're going to dive into one of the most essential aspects of language learning, a balanced approach. Many language learners tend to focus on just one aspect of language learning, whether it's grammar, vocabulary, speaking, or listening. While it's possible to improve by focusing on just one area, the truth is that a well-rounded approach is far more effective for long-term success. So, in this chapter, we'll explore why balancing different aspects of language learning is crucial and how you can achieve a balanced approach to learning English. What is a balanced approach to language learning? A balanced approach to language learning means that you don't just focus on one area in isolation, but instead give equal importance to all four major language skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Additionally, it involves studying both the active aspects of language, like speaking and writing, and the passive aspects, like listening and reading. The goal is to develop all aspects of language proficiency simultaneously so that each skill supports the others. When you improve in one area, it has a positive impact on the others. For example, improving your listening skills helps you develop better speaking skills, and practicing writing helps you refine your grammar and vocabulary. By fee. Incorporating different methods and balancing your learning activities, you'll create a more comprehensive learning routine that keeps you engaged and ensures you're making steady progress. The 4 core language skills, a holistic approach. Let's take a closer look at the 4 core skills of language learning and why each one is essential. Listening. Listening is often the first skill that people develop when learning a new language, and for good reason. Listening allows you to familiarize yourself with how English sounds, including pronunciation, rhythm, intonation, and stress. It also helps you learn how native speakers use words and phrases in real-life contexts. When you engage in listening practice, you're not just improving your comprehension, but also building your vocabulary and learning how to structure sentences naturally. The more you listen to English, whether it's through podcasts, movies, songs, or conversations, the more intuitive your understanding of the language becomes. However, if you only focus on listening without balancing it with other skills, you might struggle when it's time to speak or write. This is why it's crucial to integrate listening with other skills, like speaking and writing, to ensure you're able to actively use what you're learning. Speaking. Speaking is perhaps the most intimidating skill for many learners. But the truth is, speaking is the fastest way to become fluent. When you practice speaking, you force yourself to think in English and make real-time decisions about which words and phrases to use. Speaking helps you practice your pronunciation, intonation, and grammar in a way that listening alone cannot. Incorporating speaking practice into your routine might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you don't have many opportunities to speak with native speakers. But there are plenty of ways to practice speaking on your own. You can record yourself speaking, practice with language exchange partners, or even talk to yourself in English. It's essential to push yourself to speak as often as possible because it accelerates your learning and boosts your confidence. To truly benefit from speaking practice, it should be paired with listening and reading. When you listen to a podcast or watch a video, try repeating what you hear and mimicking the speaker's pronunciation and intonation. This reinforces your speaking skills and helps you sound more natural when you converse. C. Reading. Reading is an important skill because it exposes you to the structure of the language in a more formal way. Through reading, you'll come across written grammar, new vocabulary, and idiomatic expressions that might not always appear in spoken language. Reading also helps you improve your comprehension skills, as you need to understand the meaning of sentences in context. Reading in English can take many forms: books, articles, blogs, or social media posts. Each of these sources exposes you to different types of language. For example, reading books allows you to encounter a more formal or academic language, while reading blogs or social media exposes you to casual, everyday language. However, if you focus only on reading, you might struggle to understand spoken English or use the vocabulary and grammar you've learned in conversation. This is where a balanced approach comes in. After reading something, try speaking or writing about it. This helps reinforce the material and connects the passive skill of reading with the active skills of speaking and writing. D. Writing. Writing is another essential skill that helps consolidate everything you've learned in English. Through writing, you practice sentence structure, grammar, and vocabulary in a way that you might not do with speaking. Writing helps you organize your thoughts and express them clearly, which is especially important for professional or academic settings. When you write in English, you get a chance to use new vocabulary and grammar that you've encountered in reading or listening. This practice makes these elements more accessible to you when you speak or listen. Plus, writing forces you to pay attention to detail, which can help correct mistakes in grammar or sentence structure that you might overlook in casual conversation. To balance your writing practice, try different types of writing: essays, journals, emails, and even creative writing. This variety will keep you engaged and help you develop your language skills in different contexts. Active versus passive learning. One of the main components of a balanced approach is the difference between active learning and passive learning. Active learning involves engaging directly with the language. It includes speaking, writing, and practicing grammar exercises. Active learning requires you to make conscious decisions about how to use the language, and it helps you internalize the knowledge. Passive learning, on the other hand, involves absorbing the language without necessarily producing it. Listening to podcasts, watching movies, and reading books are all forms of passive learning. Passive learning is just as important as active learning because it exposes you to the language naturally and gives you an intuitive sense of how the language works. For a truly balanced approach, you need to incorporate both active and passive learning. If you spend all your time passively consuming English content without actively practicing speaking or writing, you may understand English well but struggle to communicate effectively. Likewise, if you only focus on writing and speaking without listening or reading, you might miss out on the nuances of the language and the natural flow of conversation. How to achieve a balanced approach. Achieving a balanced approach to language learning doesn't mean that you have to spend equal time on every skill every day. Instead, it's about integrating all skills into your learning routine so that each one supports the others. Here are some tips on how to create a balanced study routine. Mix active and passive learning. Spend some time listening or reading in English, and then switch to practicing speaking and writing. For example, after listening to a podcast, write a summary of what you learned, or talk about the topic in English with a language partner. Focus on practical, real-world content. Choose materials that reflect real-life English. For example, listen to podcasts on topics that interest you, watch TV shows or movies in English, and read blogs or books. This helps you learn the language in context and makes it more relevant to your life. Set specific, achievable goals. Whether you want to improve your speaking, listening, or writing, set specific goals for each skill. For example, aim to practice speaking for 20 minutes a day, or read a chapter of a book in English each week. Gradually increase the difficulty of your goals to challenge yourself without feeling overwhelmed. Use technology to your advantage. Apps, language exchange platforms, and online resources can help you balance your learning. You can listen to English podcasts, write in online forums, or practice speaking with native speakers on language exchange apps. Review regularly. Regular review is key to retaining what you've learned. Set aside time each week to review vocabulary, grammar, and notes from your listening or reading sessions. This ensures that you're reinforcing what you've learned and helps you avoid forgetting important concepts. Make learning fun. Keep things exciting by mixing up your routine. Watch movies or shows in English, listen to music, or play games in English. The more fun you have, the more likely you are to stay engaged and motivated. Conclusion. In conclusion, a balanced approach to language learning is essential for long-term success. By focusing on all 4 core language skills, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and integrating both active and passive learning techniques, you'll develop a more comprehensive understanding of the language. This balanced approach ensures that you're not just learning English in one area, but actively applying it in various contexts, which will help you become a more confident and fluent speaker. That's it for Chapter 6. In the next chapter, we'll discuss how to stay motivated and continue progressing in your language learning journey. Stay tuned. Chapter 7. How to use podcasts to improve your English. Welcome to Chapter 7. Now that we've talked about the importance of engaging with English content, it's time to dive deeper into how you can use one of the most powerful tools for language learning: podcasts. Podcasts are an incredible resource for improving your English, and in this chapter, we're going to explore how you can use them effectively to enhance all aspects of your language skills. Podcasts are versatile, accessible, and can be integrated into your daily life in a way that many other learning tools can't. They allow you to immerse yourself in real-world English, and with the right strategies, you can make the most out of them. So, let's explore how you can use podcasts to not just passively consume content, but actively improve your English. Why podcasts are so effective for language learning. Before we get into the specifics of how to use podcasts to improve your English, let's first understand why they are so effective. There are several reasons podcasts stand out as a tool for language learners. Authenticity. Podcasts feature natural, unscripted conversations, often between native speakers. This gives you exposure to authentic English, including idioms, slang, and expressions that you might not find in textbooks or structured lessons. Hearing English spoken in a real-world context helps you get used to the flow of the language, including its natural rhythms, stress, and intonation. Convenience. Podcasts are portable, meaning you can listen to them wherever you are, on your way to work, at the gym, while cooking, or even during your commute. This makes them easy to fit into your daily routine, allowing for consistent practice without disrupting your schedule. Variety. Podcasts cover an almost infinite range of topics, from current events and business to entertainment and storytelling. This variety allows you to choose topics that interest you, which makes the learning process more enjoyable and engaging. Plus, you can find podcasts that cater to all levels of English, from beginner to advanced, improves listening and speaking. Listening to podcasts regularly helps develop your listening comprehension. You'll get used to different accents, speech speeds, and vocabulary used by native speakers. Additionally, podcasts can improve your speaking skills as you mimic what you hear, which reinforces pronunciation, intonation, and grammar. Choosing the right podcasts for your level. The first step in using podcasts effectively is choosing the right ones for your current level. Podcasts come in various levels of difficulty, so it's important to select content that matches your proficiency while also challenging you to improve. For beginners, if you're just starting with English, look for podcasts that use simple, clear, language. These podcasts should focus on vocabulary and grammar at a beginner level and avoid complex sentence structures. Many podcasts are specifically designed for English learners, such as ESL Pod or the English We Speak, which focus on vocabulary, pronunciation, and basic grammar. They often speak slowly and repeat key phrases to help learners understand. For intermediate learners, as you progress, you can move on to podcasts that feature more natural conversations. Podcasts for intermediate learners should still be clear, but might include more complex vocabulary and quicker speech. Luke's English podcast or The Fluent Show offer great content for intermediate learners, blending informative content with opportunities to expand your vocabulary and listening skills. For advanced learners, once you've reached an advanced level, you can challenge yourself with podcasts aimed at native speakers. These podcasts will expose you to a variety of accents, speeds of speech, and advanced vocabulary. Look for podcasts that discuss current affairs, social issues, or specialized topics. Examples include The Daily by the New York Times or This American Life, which offer in-depth content for advanced learners. Remember, as you get better, don't be afraid to challenge yourself with podcasts that might be a bit more difficult than your current level. As Krashen's input hypothesis suggests, exposure to language just beyond your current ability, I+1, will push you to expand your skills while still being comprehensible. 3. Active listening. How to maximize your podcast learning. While listening to podcasts is valuable to truly benefit from them, you need to engage in active listening. Active listening is when you go beyond just hearing the words and really focus on understanding the meaning and structure of what's being said. Here are some strategies for active listening that can help you get the most out of podcasts. A. Take notes and review vocabulary. While you listen, make it a habit to take notes. Write down any new words, phrases, or expressions you come across. Later, look up the meanings of unfamiliar words and try to use them in your own sentences. This will help reinforce new vocabulary and make it easier to remember. For example, after listening to an episode of a podcast, go through your notes and highlight key words that you didn't know or found interesting. Try to use them in your own speaking or writing practice. B. Listen multiple times. One of the great advantages of podcasts is that you can listen to them multiple times. Don't expect to understand everything on your first listen. Instead, listen through once to get the general idea, and then listen again to catch more details. You might even want to listen a third or fourth time to focus on specific areas you found challenging. This repetition helps you internalize vocabulary, grammar structures, and pronunciation, making it easier to recall when you need it. C. Pause and repeat. When you hear a sentence or phrase that you like or find difficult, pause the podcast and repeat it aloud. Mimic the speaker's tone, speed, and intonation. This technique, known as shadowing, helps you practice pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm. It also reinforces the vocabulary and grammar used in the sentence. Don't worry if you don't sound exactly like the speaker at first. The goal is to get comfortable with the language and gradually improve your fluency. D. Focus on understanding. Meaning first. When you're listening, don't worry too much about understanding every single word. Instead, focus on understanding the overall meaning of what's being said. Even if you don't catch every word, you can still understand the gist of the conversation. This approach mimics how we learn our first language. By focusing on understanding the message, not necessarily on understanding every individual word. Over time, as you continue to listen, you'll catch more and more details. E. Analyze the grammar and sentence structure. While you listen, try to identify the grammar structures being used. Focus on how sentences are formed, how questions are asked, and how verbs are conjugated. For example, listen for patterns in verb tenses, how phrasal verbs are used, or how conditional sentences are formed. This is especially helpful if you're an intermediate or advanced learner. By actively analyzing sentence structures as you listen, you'll reinforce your grammar knowledge in a natural, real-world context. 4. How to integrate podcasts into your daily routine. One of the best things about podcasts is that they're incredibly flexible. You can listen to them while doing everyday activities, which makes it easy to integrate language learning into your routine. Here are a few ways to do that. On your commute. Whether you're driving, taking the bus, or walking to work, listening to a podcast during your commute is a great way to make use of your time. Instead of scrolling through social media or listening to music, why not tune into an English podcast? During exercise. Whether you're at the gym, running, or walking, listening to a podcast can make exercise more enjoyable while helping you improve your language skills. Pick a podcast that interests you and let the learning happen naturally. While doing household chores, cooking, cleaning, or doing laundry are perfect times to listen to a podcast. This way, you can make the most of your time at home and keep your language learning consistent. Before bed. If you have trouble falling asleep, try listening to a podcast before bed. Choose a calm, soothing podcast or an interesting story that can help you wind down while still immersing yourself in English. Using podcasts for other language skills. Podcasts are not just for listening practice. They can also support other language skills like speaking, reading, and writing. Speaking. After listening to an episode, summarize it aloud in your own words. Practice speaking about the topics you heard and try to use new vocabulary and expressions. Reading. If the podcast has a transcript, follow along with the text as you listen. This helps you connect spoken and written language, reinforces spelling, and helps you pick up new vocabulary more effectively. Writing. After listening to a podcast, try writing a short summary or response to what you heard. This gives you a chance to reinforce new vocabulary, practice grammar, and develop your writing skills. Tracking progress and staying motivated. To keep track of your progress, set goals for your podcast learning. For example, you might aim to listen to a certain number of episodes each week, learn 10 new words per episode, or be able to summarize each podcast in English. Additionally, take note of your improvement. As you listen more and practice speaking and writing, you'll notice that your comprehension, vocabulary, and speaking confidence improve over time. Conclusion. In conclusion, podcasts are an incredibly versatile and powerful tool for improving your English. By choosing the right podcast for your level, actively engaging with the content, and integrating listening practice into your daily routine, you'll steadily improve all aspects of your language skills. Remember, consistency is key, and with time, you'll see significant progress in your listening, speaking, reading, and writing abilities. That's it for Chapter 7. In the next chapter, we'll look at practical ways to stay motivated and continue progressing in your language learning journey. Stay tuned. Chapter 8. Active Study Through Podcasts. Welcome to Chapter 8. Now that we've discussed how podcasts can be an incredible tool for improving your English, it's time to take it a step further and explore active study. Passive listening, while useful, is not enough on its own to make rapid progress in language learning. To truly maximize the potential of podcasts, you need to engage with them actively. In this chapter, we'll explore how you can turn your podcast listening sessions into active study sessions that significantly improve your English skills. What is active study? Before we dive into the specifics of how to use podcasts for active study, let's first define what we mean by active study. Active study is the process of engaging directly with the material, rather than just passively consuming it. It involves thinking critically, making connections, and actively practicing the language while you're learning it. For example, instead of simply listening to a podcast and letting the words passively go in one ear and out the other, active study involves doing things like taking notes, looking up new vocabulary, mimicking pronunciation, and applying what you've learned in real-life situations. This active involvement with the language helps solidify what you've learned and makes it more likely that you'll retain the information long-term. How to turn listening into active study. Now that we know what active study is, let's talk about how you can turn your podcast listening sessions into effective learning opportunities. Here are some strategies to help you engage more deeply with the content. A. Take notes while listening. One of the simplest and most effective ways to engage actively with a podcast is by taking notes as you listen. Writing things down forces you to focus on the key ideas and vocabulary in the episode. Here's how you can do it. Key vocabulary. Write down new words or phrases you don't understand. Look them up afterward and try to memorize them. Pay attention to their meanings and how they're used in context. Important concepts. If the podcast covers an interesting idea or concept, jot down a brief note about it. Try to summarize the main points in your own words to ensure you understand them. Grammar patterns. Pay attention to any grammatical structures that you find interesting or challenging. Write them down and try to identify how they're used in the podcast. For example, notice how certain verbs are used with specific prepositions, or how different tenses are applied. By taking notes, you'll be actively engaging with the material and reinforcing new language in a way that will help you remember it. B. Rewind and listen again. One of the best ways to engage actively with podcast content is to listen to the same section more than once. Don't expect to catch everything on the first listen, especially if you're listening to a more advanced podcast. Listening multiple times helps reinforce the language and gives you a deeper understanding. Here's how you can approach it. First, listen. On your first listen, don't worry too much about understanding every single word. Focus on the general meaning and the flow of the conversation. Second, listen. On your second listen, try to catch the words or phrases you missed the first time. Pay more attention to pronunciation and intonation. If you can, try to repeat what you hear and mimic the speaker. Third, listen. On the third listen, focus on specific areas that were difficult for you. If you're listening to a podcast with a transcript, follow along with the text and try to match the words you hear with their written form. This can help improve both listening comprehension and spelling. By listening multiple times, you reinforce the language and deepen your understanding of how it's used. C. Mimic the speaker, shadowing. One of the most powerful active study techniques is shadowing. This involves listening to a podcast and immediately repeating what the speaker says. The goal is to mimic the speaker's pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm as closely as possible. This technique can dramatically improve your speaking and listening skills. Here's how you can do it. Choose a segment of the podcast, a few sentences, or a paragraph, and listen carefully. Pause the podcast and try to repeat what the speaker just said. imitating their exact tone, pace, and stress patterns. Play the podcast again and repeat this process. Try to match your speech as closely as possible to the original speaker's style. If you struggle with pronunciation, replay the segment multiple times and practice until you feel comfortable. Shadowing helps improve your speaking fluency, pronunciation, and listening comprehension because you're not just passively listening, you're actively producing the language. It also helps you become familiar with natural, native-like speech patterns. Pause and reflect. While listening to a podcast, don't just sit back and relax. Make a habit of pausing the podcast periodically to reflect on what you've heard. Ask yourself questions like, what new vocabulary did I hear? Do I know the meaning? How? Did the speaker use certain grammatical structures? Can I think of examples of when I could use them? Can I summarize the main point of the episode in my own words? By pausing to reflect, you allow yourself the opportunity to really process the information and connect it to your own knowledge of the language. This active reflection will help deepen your understanding and reinforce the language in your memory. Engage in discussions or write a summary. After listening to the podcast, try to engage in a discussion or write a summary of what you've learned. This allows you to practice speaking or writing, which helps reinforce the material and actively use the language you've just encountered. Here are some ideas. Speak about what you learned. Talk to a language partner or record yourself. Speaking about the podcast topic, try to incorporate new vocabulary or grammar structures that you learned from the episode. Write a summary. Write a short summary of the podcast in your own words. This forces you to recall the main ideas and practice using new vocabulary. If you're practicing a particular grammar point, try to include it in your summary. Both speaking and writing will solidify what you've learned, and they will help you see how well you've understood the material up. Practice vocabulary with flashcards. After listening to the podcast, especially if you've come across new vocabulary, use flashcards to reinforce what you've learned. You can create flashcards using physical index cards or use digital flashcard apps like Anki or Quizlet. For each new word or phrase, write down its meaning and maybe even create a sentence using that word. Revisit your flashcards regularly to reinforce the vocabulary and commit it to long-term memory. Using flashcards for vocabulary acquisition is one of the best ways to actively study words you've encountered in podcasts and retain them for future. Source 3. Using transcripts for active study. Many podcasts offer transcripts, and these can be a goldmine for active study. By reading along with the transcript while listening, you not only practice your listening skills but also improve your reading comprehension and reinforce your understanding of grammar. Here's how you can use transcripts effectively. Follow along. As you listen to the podcast, follow along with the transcript. This helps you connect spoken and written English, which improves both your listening and reading skills. Identify difficult phrases. If you don't understand something while listening, refer to the transcript to see how the word or phrase is written. This can help clarify any confusion and reinforce the connection between sound and meaning. Check pronunciation. After listening to a podcast, you can focus on how words are pronounced. Check the transcript to make sure you're pronouncing them correctly, and if not, correct yourself by repeating the words aloud. Transcripts allow you to actively process both the spoken and written forms of the language, reinforcing your understanding and improving your overall proficiency. Consistency is key. To see real progress, consistency is key. Try to incorporate active study through podcasts into your daily routine, even if you can only spare 15-30 minutes a day. Consistent listening, note-taking, and speaking will make a significant difference over time. Start small and build up your routine. Over time, you'll find that you're able to engage with podcasts more actively and that your comprehension and speaking skills improve rapidly. Conclusion. In conclusion, podcasts are an amazing resource for learning English. But to make the most out of them, you need to approach them with active study. By taking notes, listening multiple times, mimicking pronunciation, reflecting on what you've heard, and practicing speaking and writing, you can turn every podcast episode into an effective language learning session. Remember, the more you engage with the language, the faster and more effectively you'll improve. Make podcast listening a regular part of your study routine, and use these active study techniques to reinforce your learning and make progress toward fluency. That's it for Chapter 8. In the next chapter, we'll dive into how to track your progress and stay motivated on your language learning journey. Stay tuned. Chapter 9. Developing Speaking Skills with Podcasts. Welcome to Chapter 9. In this chapter, we will explore how to develop your speaking skills through podcasts. While listening to English podcasts can significantly improve your comprehension, pronunciation, and vocabulary, they can also be a powerful tool for improving your speaking skills. In this chapter, we'll discuss practical strategies for using podcasts as an active tool to boost your speaking abilities and how you can incorporate speaking practice into your daily routine. Why speaking is so important. Before we dive into the specifics of how podcasts can help you improve your speaking, let's first explore why speaking is such a critical aspect of language learning. Speaking is the active use of a language, and it is often the skill that learners find most challenging, especially when they're just starting out. However, it is also the most rewarding skill to develop, as it allows you to actively communicate in English and express your thoughts, ideas, and feelings. Improving your speaking skills means you can confidently hold conversations, express yourself clearly, and understand others when they speak. The more you practice speaking, the more fluent and natural you will become. As the saying goes, practice makes perfect, and the more you speak, the more comfortable and confident you will feel in real-life situations. Why podcasts are great for speaking practice. Podcasts are a fantastic resource for improving speaking skills for several reasons. Real-world content. Podcasts feature natural conversations between native speakers, which exposes you to how English is actually spoken. This includes hearing idiomatic expressions, slang, and different accents that you might not encounter in a textbook or traditional language class. Exposure to diverse topics. Listening to a wide range of topics gives you access to different vocabulary and ways of speaking. Whether it's a podcast about business, comedy, science, or storytelling, each genre will introduce new phrases, expressions, and ways of thinking in English. Modeling real conversations. Podcasts provide a clear example of how people interact in everyday life. They offer the opportunity to hear full, real-time sentences, responses, and reactions, giving you insight into conversational flow, pauses, and how speakers navigate through discussions. Repeatability. One of the unique benefits of podcasts is the ability to listen to them repeatedly. You can pause, rewind, and listen to challenging sections over and over again, helping you focus on particular aspects of speaking. Strategies to develop speaking skills with podcasts. Now that we know why podcasts are so valuable, let's take a look at some specific strategies you can use to develop your speaking skills through podcasts. Shadowing. Mimicking native speakers. One of the most effective ways to practice speaking with podcasts is by using the shadowing technique. Shadowing involves listening to a segment of a podcast and immediately repeating what the speaker says, trying to mimic their pronunciation, intonation, and speech patterns as closely as possible. Here's how to do it. Select a short section. Choose a short part of a podcast, a sentence or two, and listen carefully. Ideally, choose a section that you find interesting or challenging. Pause and repeat. Pause the podcast after the speaker says a sentence and repeat it aloud. Focus on matching their pronunciation, speed, and stress. If necessary, rewind and listen to the segment again. Record yourself. After you've repeated the sentence a few times, record yourself speaking it and compare it with the original. Pay attention to any differences in pronunciation or intonation. Gradual. Practice. As you get better at shadowing, gradually increase the length of the segments you're working with. Start with one sentence, then move on to longer segments or even full paragraphs. Shadowing helps you internalize native speakers' speech patterns, which improves your ability to sound more natural when speaking. It also builds muscle memory for how to pronounce words and helps you become more familiar with the rhythm of the language. B. Summarize what you hear. Another great way to develop your speaking skills with podcasts is by summarizing the content. After listening to a podcast episode, practice speaking by summarizing the main points in your own words. This forces you to recall the information, speak spontaneously, and express yourself clearly in English. Here's how to do it. Listen to the episode. Choose an episode that is appropriate for your level and listen to it without any distractions. Focus on understanding the main ideas and key details. Pause and summarize. After listening to a section of the podcast, pause and try to summarize what you heard. You can speak it out loud or write down your thoughts. Focus on using your own words and speaking as fluently as possible. Full summary. Once you've gone through the entire episode, try to summarize the key points in a few sentences. Speak about the main idea, what you learned, and any interesting points you found in the podcast. This exercise helps reinforce new vocabulary and structures while giving you an opportunity to practice speaking in full sentences. Summarizing helps you practice speaking on the spot and improves your ability to express ideas clearly without relying on scripted responses. C. Use new vocabulary in context. As you listen to podcasts, you'll inevitably come across new vocabulary, phrases, and expressions. A great way to improve your speaking is by actively using the new words and phrases you learn. Here's how you can do it. Write down new words. While listening, keep a notebook handy and write down any words or phrases that you don't understand or that seem interesting. Look up their meanings and try to understand how they are used in the context of the conversation. Create sentences. After learning new vocabulary, try to use it in your own sentences. Speak the sentences out loud to practice your pronunciation and help reinforce the words in your memory. Engage in conversation. Practice using the new words in conversations with a language partner or even in your daily life. The more you use the new vocabulary in context, the more likely it will stick, and the more natural your speaking will become. Using new vocabulary in your own speech is one of the best ways to ensure it becomes part of your active language skills, helping you sound more fluent and confident. D. Record yourself speaking. Recording yourself speaking is a simple but powerful tool for improving your speaking skills. By listening to your recordings, you can identify areas for improvement and track your progress over time. Here's how to do it. Choose a segment. After listening to a podcast, choose a short segment of the episode and repeat it aloud. Record yourself while speaking and compare your recording with the original. Analyze your recording. Listen to your recording and pay attention to any mistakes or areas where you can improve. Do you sound natural? Are you pronouncing words correctly? Do you need to work on your intonation or rhythm? Compare over time. Record yourself regularly and listen to how your speaking skills improve over time. You should notice more fluency, better pronunciation, and greater confidence. Recording yourself helps you become more aware of your speaking habits and gives you an opportunity to correct mistakes and refine your language skills. Join a conversation, group, or language exchange. To truly develop your speaking skills, you need to practice speaking with other people. Podcasts can help you build your vocabulary and understanding, but engaging in real conversations is essential for improving fluency. Find a language exchange partner. Use language exchange apps, websites, or communities to connect with native English speakers or other learners. You can practice speaking with them in real time and get feedback on your pronunciation and fluency. Join a speaking group. Many cities have language exchange events or speaking clubs where learners gather to practice speaking English. This provides a great opportunity to interact with others and improve your communication skills. By practicing speaking regularly with others, you can apply what you've learned from podcasts in real-life situations, which is key to developing fluency. Making speaking practice a daily habit. The key to developing speaking skills is consistent practice. Just like any other language skill, speaking requires frequent and sustained effort. Here are some ways to incorporate speaking practice into your daily routine. Speak aloud every day. Make it a habit to speak in English for a set amount of time each day. This could be as simple as talking to yourself, recording summaries, or practicing new vocabulary. Set speaking goals. Set specific, achievable goals for speaking practice. For example, you could aim to speak for 10 minutes every day or engage in at least one conversation each week. Use speaking in everyday activities. Find ways to use English in your daily life. Whether it's practicing your grocery list in English, speaking about your day, or chatting with friends, the more you use English, the better. Conclusion. In conclusion, podcasts are a fantastic resource for improving your speaking skills. By using techniques like shadowing, summarizing, and recording yourself, you can actively engage with the content and practice speaking in real time. Consistent practice and active engagement with podcasts will help you improve your pronunciation, fluency, and confidence. Remember, speaking is an essential part of becoming fluent in English, and with regular practice, you'll notice significant improvement. That's it for Chapter 9. In the next chapter, we'll dive into the role of grammar in your language learning journey and how to study it effectively. Stay tuned. Chapter 10: Practical Strategies for Building Confidence in Speaking. Welcome to Chapter 10. If you've been following along with this series, you now know how important it is to practice speaking English. But let's be honest, speaking can often be the hardest part of learning a new language. For many learners, the fear of making mistakes, sounding unnatural, or being misunderstood can make speaking feel intimidating. In this chapter, we'll focus on building confidence in speaking. We'll go over practical strategies that will help you speak with more self-assurance and overcome the obstacles that might be holding you back. Understanding the role of confidence in language learning. Before we dive into specific strategies, it's important to understand why confidence matters so much in language learning. Confidence in speaking is not just about being able to speak fluently, but also about feeling comfortable using the language, making mistakes, and improving over time. When you're confident, you're more likely to take risks, try new words and phrases, and engage in conversations. Confidence allows you to push through moments of doubt, even when you're unsure about your grammar or pronunciation. It also helps you stay motivated to keep speaking, even when progress feels slow. If you're shy or unsure, you might avoid speaking altogether, which can significantly slow your language learning progress. But when you have confidence, you can embrace the process of learning and enjoy the journey without fearing judgment or mistakes. So, how can you build that confidence? Let's look at some practical strategies. Start small and build gradually. The key to building confidence is starting small. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to have a perfect conversation in English right away. Start by setting realistic and achievable goals. A. Practice. Speaking alone. One way to build confidence is by practicing speaking English on your own before engaging in conversations with others. This way, you can get comfortable with forming sentences and expressing your thoughts without the pressure of someone else listening. Here are some ideas. Talk to yourself. Narrate your day in English or describe what you see around you. You could talk about your plans for the day or explain how you would solve a problem. This helps you practice speaking fluidly and builds your self-assurance. Record yourself. Record yourself speaking about a topic and listen back to it. Don't worry about making it perfect. Just focus on being natural. This will help you spot areas where you might need to improve and give you the opportunity to monitor your progress. Shadowing practice. Choose a segment from a podcast or a YouTube video and shadow the speaker by repeating what they say, mimicking their pronunciation and tone. This helps you practice speaking naturally and builds your confidence with real English usage. Use easy topics. Start with topics that are easy and familiar to you. Talking about things you know well, such as your hobbies, family, or daily routine, will make you feel more at ease and confident in your ability to speak. Avoid jumping into complex or unfamiliar topics when you're just starting to build your confidence. As you grow more comfortable, you can gradually expand your range of topics. Focus on communication, not perfection. One of the biggest barriers to confidence is the fear of making mistakes. Many learners are terrified of speaking because they're worried about using the wrong word or making a grammatical error. But it's important to remember that language learning is a process. You don't have to speak perfectly to communicate effectively. Embrace mistakes as part of the learning process. Mistakes are a natural part of learning any language. Even native speakers make mistakes. Instead of viewing mistakes as failures, try to see them as opportunities for improvement. Every time you make a mistake, you're one step closer to mastering that aspect of the language. When you make a mistake, don't let it discourage you. Instead, acknowledge it, correct it, and move on. For example, if you say, "I go to store," instead of, "I'm going to the store," recognize the error and make a mental note to use the correct structure next time. Over time, these small adjustments will help you improve. B. Aim for clear communication, not perfection. When you're speaking, focus on getting your message across rather than stressing over every word. Native speakers don't always use perfect grammar or pronunciation, but they can still communicate effectively. The goal is to be understood and to express yourself clearly. Don't get bogged down by every detail. Focus on the overall meaning. For example, if you're unsure about the pronunciation of a word, it's okay to adjust it slightly as long as the listener can understand you. The more you practice, the more confident you'll become, and the less you'll worry about perfection. 4. Practice with language partners. Building confidence in speaking is much easier when you have someone to practice with. Language exchange partners or conversation groups provide a supportive environment where you can practice speaking in a low-pressure setting. Find a conversation partner. Look for a language exchange partner who speaks English and is learning your native language. This creates a mutually beneficial environment where you can help each other. Many language exchange platforms and apps like HelloTalk or Tandem allow you to find speaking partners from all over the world. Regular practice with a partner will help you become more comfortable speaking and build your confidence. B. Join conversation groups. If finding a one-on-one language partner feels daunting, consider joining a conversation group or club. Many communities and online platforms host free language exchange events or informal meetups where learners gather to speak in English. These events typically have a relaxed, supportive atmosphere, making it easier to practice without feeling too self-conscious. In addition to regular speaking practice, You can also seek out speaking challenges or exercises that help you get comfortable in various conversational settings. By practicing with others, you will not only boost your speaking skills, but also develop the confidence to speak in front of a variety of people. Use positive affirmations. Building confidence involves changing your mindset. Negative self-talk, like "I'm not good enough" or "I'll never be fluent," can hold you back from speaking freely. On the other hand, positive affirmations can help boost your confidence and encourage a positive outlook on your language learning journey. A. Practice self-encouragement. Each time you speak English, remind yourself of the progress you've made. Say things like, "I am getting better every day," or "I can express myself in English." By shifting your mindset to focus on the positive, you'll gradually overcome the fear of speaking and become more confident. E. Visualize success. Another powerful technique is visualizing success. Take a moment before you speak to imagine yourself having a confident conversation in English. Picture yourself speaking clearly, expressing your ideas effortlessly, and feeling proud of your progress. Visualization can help calm nerves and increase your belief in your abilities. 6. Get comfortable with different accents and speech speeds. Sometimes, a lack of confidence in speaking comes from the fear of not understanding people who speak quickly or with a different accent. While it's true that understanding different accents takes time, it's also important to develop confidence in your ability to understand and be understood in various contexts. Oh. Listen to different accents. Exposing yourself to different accents will help you get used to the various ways English is spoken around the world. Listen to podcasts with speakers from different regions, such as British, American, Australian, or even regional accents. The more familiar you become with different accents, the more confident you'll feel in understanding English in real-life situations. B. Practice listening to faster speech. If you find it difficult to follow fast speech, try to practice with podcasts that speak at a faster pace. Start by listening to slower-paced podcasts and gradually challenge yourself with faster speech. Use features like slowdown options on podcast apps if available, and then work towards listening at normal speeds. 7. Set realistic speaking goals. Set achievable, specific speaking goals to give yourself direction and a sense of accomplishment. For example, your goal could be to introduce yourself confidently in English, ask for directions, or give a short presentation in English. Start with small goals and work your way up to more complex speaking tasks. By breaking your goals down into manageable steps, you'll feel more confident in your ability to succeed. Celebrate your progress. As you develop your speaking skills, take time to celebrate your achievements, no matter how small. Whether it's holding a conversation with a language partner, speaking clearly in a meeting, or using new vocabulary in a casual chat, acknowledge your progress. Celebrating these milestones will help you stay motivated and build your confidence as you continue on your language learning journey. Conclusion. In conclusion, building confidence in speaking English is a gradual process, but with consistent practice, a positive mindset, and a willingness to make mistakes, you can significantly improve your speaking abilities. Start small, focus on clear communication, and find opportunities to practice speaking with others. The more you practice, the more natural and confident you will become in expressing yourself in English. Remember, confidence is not about being perfect. It's about feeling comfortable using the language and enjoying the process of learning. That's it for Chapter 10. In the next chapter, we'll explore strategies for improving your grammar and how to integrate it effectively into your speaking practice. Stay tuned. Chapter 11. Final thoughts. Learning English as a continuous journey. Welcome to Chapter 11, the final chapter of this guide. We've covered a lot of ground in our journey through learning English, from developing listening and speaking skills to engaging with podcasts and building confidence. Now, it's time to reflect on the bigger picture and understand that learning English is not a destination, but a continuous journey. In this chapter, we'll discuss how to embrace this journey, the mindset you need to succeed, and how to maintain your motivation in the long run. Understanding language learning as a lifelong journey. Learning a language, especially English, is not something you finish or complete in a certain amount of time. While you may set goals like achieving fluency or improving your speaking skills, language learning is ongoing. As you become more proficient, new challenges will arise, and new areas for improvement will always present themselves. Why is this important? Because it's essential to adopt the mindset that learning English is a continuous process, not a goal with a fixed endpoint. Every time you reach a milestone, whether it's understanding a podcast without subtitles, speaking confidently in a conversation, or writing a detailed essay, you'll realize that there's always more to learn, more to explore, and more ways to improve. The key is not to be discouraged by this idea of never-ending learning, but to embrace it. This mindset shifts your focus from the pressure of reaching perfection to the joy of continual improvement. Language learning isn't about achieving an ultimate state of fluency, but about progressing step by step, bit by bit. It's about celebrating small wins and recognizing the progress you've made. The importance of patience in your journey. Patience is a cornerstone of successful language learning. If you expect to master English overnight, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. As we've discussed earlier, fluency is a gradual process that takes time, effort, and consistent practice. It's easy to get discouraged when you feel like you haven't made significant progress. But remember that the journey is full of ups and downs. Instead of focusing solely on outcomes, focus on the process. Enjoy the learning journey, the challenges you face, the mistakes you make, and the lessons you learn. The setbacks you encounter today are often the very steps that lead to breakthroughs tomorrow. Embrace every challenge as an opportunity to grow and remember that mistakes are not failures. They are part of your learning process. When you're feeling frustrated, take a step back and appreciate how far you've come. Reflect on the vocabulary you've learned, the conversations you've had, and the skills you've gained. Every step counts, and every piece of knowledge you gain is a step closer to fluency. Setting realistic and achievable goals. While learning English is an ongoing journey, setting clear, achievable goals along the way is essential for staying focused and motivated. These goals should be specific, measurable, and realistic, and they should be aligned with your long-term aspirations. Your goals can vary depending on your needs and interests. Here are a few examples. Short-term goals. Learn 10 new vocabulary words each week. Write a 200-word summary of a podcast episode every day. Hold a 5-minute conversation with a language partner 3 times a week. Medium-term goals. Be able to understand a 15-minute podcast episode without needing to look up every word. Complete an online language course or certification. Speak in English for 30 minutes on a wide range of topics with ease. Long-term goals. Achieve fluency in English to the point where you can work or study in an English-speaking environment. Feel confident enough to give a presentation in English or attend meetings without hesitation. Setting realistic and measurable goals helps. You track your progress and gives you a sense of accomplishment. As you meet each goal, you'll feel motivated to keep going. And as you continue to improve, don't forget to revisit and revise your goals to keep challenging yourself. 4. Staying motivated for the long haul. Staying motivated throughout your language learning journey is crucial. There will be times when you feel discouraged, frustrated, or like you're not making as much progress as you hoped. But learning English is not just about being motivated when things are going well. It's about maintaining motivation through the inevitable ups and downs. Here are some strategies to help you stay motivated over the long term. A. Celebrate small wins. Acknowledge every step forward. Celebrating small achievements, like learning a new grammar rule or understanding a difficult podcast episode, gives you a sense of progress. It's easy to overlook these small victories, but they add up over time and build momentum. For example, after completing a difficult exercise or mastering a new language skill, reward yourself with something you enjoy. It doesn't have to be a big reward, just a small treat, like watching a favorite show in English, can keep you motivated. Find ways to make learning fun. If you make language learning feel like a chore, it can quickly become boring. To stay motivated, find ways to make it enjoyable. Watch TV shows or movies in English that interest you, listen to podcasts on topics you love, or try reading books or articles that you find exciting. The more fun you have with English, the more motivated you'll be to continue learning. You can also gamify your learning. Set daily or weekly challenges for yourself, such as learning a certain number of words, completing a certain amount of listening practice, or speaking for a set amount of time. You can use language learning apps that turn study into a game, offering rewards and levels as you progress. C. Connect with a language community. Learning with others can significantly boost your motivation. Join online language communities or groups where you can share your progress, ask questions, and engage with fellow learners. Having a support system helps keep you accountable and provides a sense of camaraderie. You could also participate in language exchange events or find a language partner to practice speaking regularly. The more you practice with others, the more motivated you'll be to continue improving. Remember your why. Remind yourself regularly why you're learning English, whether it's for travel, career advancement, personal growth, or connecting with friends. Remembering the reasons behind your language learning goals will help reignite your motivation, especially when the going gets tough. Write down your motivations, keep them visible, and reflect on them regularly to keep your sense of purpose alive. The power of consistency. One of the most important elements of successful language learning is consistency. It's not about studying for hours at a time every day, but about creating consistent habits. Even just 20 minutes a day of active listening, speaking, reading, or writing can make a huge difference in the long run. Set a routine that works for you and stick to it. Incorporate English into your daily life as much as possible, whether that means listening to a podcast during your commute, reading a book in English before bed, or practicing speaking while cooking dinner. Small, consistent actions over time lead to significant progress. Remember, consistency doesn't mean perfection. Some days will be more productive than others, and that's okay. What matters is that you keep coming back to English every day, even if it's just for a little bit. Over time, these consistent efforts add up to major improvements. 6. Embracing the joy of learning. Above all, remember that learning a language is an incredibly rewarding experience. English opens doors to new cultures, opportunities, and experiences. Embrace the joy of learning, stay curious, and approach the process with an open mind. Don't be afraid to explore new areas of the language, whether it's a new accent, a new type of content, or a new vocabulary set. Enjoy the progress you make and embrace the challenges you encounter along the way. Language learning is about more than just memorizing rules and vocabulary. It's about opening yourself up to a new way of thinking, connecting with people, and expanding your world. Conclusion. In conclusion, learning English is a lifelong journey, not a destination. It's about continuous growth, small victories, and enjoying the process along the way. By setting realistic goals, staying motivated, and maintaining consistency, you'll find that each step you take brings you closer to becoming more fluent, confident, and comfortable in English. There will be challenges, but every challenge is an opportunity to grow and improve. So, embrace the journey, celebrate your progress, and enjoy every step of the process. Your dedication will pay off, and before you know it, you'll look back and marvel at how far you've come. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of learning English. I hope these chapters have provided valuable insights and strategies to help you on your journey. Remember, learning English is not a race. It's a lifelong adventure, and it's one that's worth every moment. Keep going, stay motivated, and enjoy the ride. That's it for Chapter 11, and that concludes this guide. I wish you all the best in your English learning journey. Keep learning, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep enjoying the process. Happy learning. Great work today. Every moment you spend practicing brings you closer to mastering your English listening and speaking skills. Remember, progress comes with patience and consistency. If this story inspired you or helped you in your learning journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Easy English Spark channel for more lessons and stories. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep believing in your growth. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and keep shining.